Today we're going to investigate something that's a bit different to normal. It doesn't fit on the bench. Well, half of it doesn't. It's a TV. Samsung TV. Here it is. A Samsung 55-inch QLED flat TV Q7 Series 7. It is not in perfect working order. As we can see, the screen's a bit wonky over that side, but it's better than it was doing, because before it was completely dead, because the screens had quite a whack down in this corner here, and that was causing an internal short circuit in the panel, and I gave it a real good poking around with screwdrivers and sharp knives and managed to dig through the glass and scrape away the bits that were short-circuiting, enough for the TV to power up, but it's unfortunately cut some of the tracks which go from the bottom where all the connections are onto the glass around the edge and up to drive the rows. So some of the rows on this side aren't working, and so the color ends up a bit weird and full of lines, but on the other side it's okay. Interestingly, when you look in the menus, it looks fine, but I think that's just because they're quite monochromatic. The really interesting thing about this TV is you don't plug things into the TV, you plug a very fine optical cable into the TV, and then everything else gets plugged into this box here. So this one's going off to the TV, and then here's the video feed that we're looking at. It's also kind of delayed because we're going through from the camera through the TV, through another camera into the capture. But it has this weird thing here on the aerial. Looks like you can do satellite and terrestrial, but it's got this strange thing which I pulled apart, and it's got in there capacitors. So that's a thing for electrically isolating your, well, from a DC point of view, isolating your aerial from this box. Presumably that's some sort of safety thing that's required in some areas, which is why perhaps it's not built in, but they made it as this add-on, but they made it right angle and they really screwed it up because this part here is not long enough, so you can only really mount it properly pointing up or down, but you can't have it going to the side because it bashes onto that, which is the special fiber thing going to the TV, and you can't have it on that because the satellite thing protrudes too far. Even if you could, you're then barging into your HDMI space. Yeah, I don't know what they're thinking there. This stuff's really hot. That's quite interesting. This thing supposedly draws 40 watts. One connect. We're going to take this apart, and then we're going to have a look inside the TV as well, and I also want to take this apart and see if we can determine how many fibers are in this cable, and if there's any electrical connections in the cable too, because it's very hard to determine. The top of this box looks like infrared light can go through it, so does that mean when you use the remote it's talking to the box? But when you look on the front of the TV, down there behind the Samsung logo, there are at least an infrared transmitter receiver and another device that I can't determine what it is. We'll have a good look at those things, and we'll see what happens when we unplug this cable. Goes off, saying that you've got to join the box up. This thing is quite warm. Let's investigate all this stuff. Interesting, the TV and this box comes with right angle cables. Presumably they're doing all this so you can connect it quite close to, push it quite close to the wall, but then you have this, which you're not allowed to bend sharply apparently. There's multiple versions of this one connect type thing. I think this is called the one clear cable. It looks like it's had a hard life in some parts of it. There's the newer version, I think this is 2018 or 19's version. The newer version, it's a thicker and it's not really a clear cable. It's more like kind of mouse cable thickness, and that also provides the power to the TV. You only plug in the AC into the box, and then there's just one thinnish cable going to the TV to bring the data and the power to it. Anyway, let's see if we can get this thing apart. Weirdly, it has one screw there with a foot next to it, and presumably there's screws under the other feet. Let's see what we can find. I haven't tried watching TV on the TV yet, but for video it might be kind of fine. Oh, so there's a screw hole there, but no screw. Weird. I also noticed doing some research that there's other versions of this box that have AV and component things on the side. Unfortunately this one doesn't, but it has a service hole, but I couldn't find any information about what you can do with that. Presumably that's some sort of serial port that you can talk to and tell it a story. No screw under there. Guessing there's no screw under this one either. It's probably going to be all clipped together with really annoying clips, and we end up destroying it trying to get it apart. Anyway, this remote is very interesting too, because these, which look like just buttons, are actually up and down, so you can switch channel up and down with that, and push to go to some menu, and volume up and down, or push to mute. And that, which looks like a scroll wheel, but I'm not sure if it is, I haven't tried that yet, but it's at least 4 buttons. And there's a voice activation thing that I really like talking to stuff. So you push that in, and that slides up to replace the batteries. I like they've used Panasonic batteries in a Samsung device, that's good. Oh, there's little ejectors for the batteries, that's cunning. Lifts up a little thingy there. That's quite neat. You have to pair the remote with the TV, so I'm wondering if this is also Bluetooth as well as IR. It definitely has IR coming out of there, which you can see. Looks like it's talking to it often. Maybe because we took the batteries out, it's trying to repair itself. Repair. Repairing? Pairing, not pairing. It also looks like that is in infrared transmissible, transparent plastic there. And also interesting that some standards logos show up through the eject hole. Quite an interesting design there. It seems to be made of a continuous piece of aluminum. Not really sure how they've done that. There must be a seam somewhere, unless it's made out of a tube that then gets formed, but even tubes have seams normally. Pretty nicely done. Not very good to have such few buttons though. It would be nicer to have actual dedicated buttons. But that's whatever. I'm guessing they want people to talk to the TV rather than use the buttons. Let's see if we can get this thing open. It has these notches. I have a special tool. Keycard. That might help us. Let's see what happens here. Oh, yep. Okay, we're going to do the same on the other side too. Presumably. It does feel like there's a screw still in that hole. There's definitely no screw in it. Weird. I want it to snap closed, but I also don't want to break the components inside by poking them. I'm going to break this card. There's definitely something going on in the corners. What is it? Oh, it looks like you have to pop it up from this end and then... I don't know, you have to... Yeah, I think we just smashed off something there. Anyway. There we go. So how did that work? And so there's no clip on that corner, but those corners have quite strong clips, so I guess what you're supposed to do is release the clips along here and then pull it like that, so that the ends pull in and then it would release from these clips, I suppose, but then that's going to be really difficult since it's got a thick base. But interesting, they got thermal pads onto that, so must be a lot of stuff going on in this thing. It's also weird that they provision for screws there. Oh, that must be also why it's quite hard to pull off, because you got these thermal interfaces to deal with. We'll have to lay those back in the designated areas. It is pretty nice that they tell you those areas. Should put that somewhere where it's not going to get filled up with dust. Yeah, there's the other clip. Got a power supply over here with the insulation around it, and then there's a cable from the power supply onto this main board. There's some clips which presumably will allow this stuff to all just hinge out. Since there's no screws or anything holding it from this end, it might have more thermal business going on. Oh, it's got that service plug. Oh, yeah, there was another thermal thing. Wow, and a solid aluminium block there. Well, so the tuner thing gets hot. And it has different mounting options there. Different regions will have different tuner thingies. Oh, that slides up. It's the power supply. 12.8 volts. And that's it, and then grounds. Non-PFC. Yeah, just a straight heatsink there with nothing attached to it. It's interesting, isn't it? Guessing they're just coupling, because that control I see on the bottom there, it's all glued in nicely. Glued in with this thermal pad. It's got a thick lead on the side there that comes out, and then some well soldered onto two of the pins that go into that heatsink. It's got a cunning way of doing it. Fine if you don't have a huge amount of heat to dissipate. So this box here is somewhat transparent. Like it could have infrared light receivers and transmitters going through it, but they've blocked half of that by this presumably aluminum plate there, and the top of this board is all covered up. It's also quite dusty. Weird that dust can get inside that more or less sealed box. Oh, it is vented a bit. There's vent holes there, and there's vent holes down the sides of the bottom, so there will be a little bit of airflow there once it starts cooking. So I'm wondering if we can pull off the heatsink on here. It looks like it's only doing, I don't know, it's doing 2 devices at least. Just 2 devices. Ah, so a special line driver thing for this one connect. And then some kind of main processor thing. Presumably the operating system of the TV and its apps and all that business is running in this box, and the TV itself just works as a monitor. Yeah, those things don't need as a tiny little bit of tube to squeeze over them to open them, to squeeze the little ends in. I don't want to break this circuit board. I don't want to break off any tracks or components. Okay, one more over here. So wondering what kind of protocol gets sent over that cable. Whether it is something as simple as like a DisplayPort or HDMI type signal. It's probably a right way to do this, which is not what I'm doing. Oh, that might be firmly glued on. Ah, that's annoying. Gonna destroy it if we take this off. Hear it ripping some sort of glue. I think we can't take it off, unfortunately, because we're gonna smash off the BGA thing that's under there if we pull it too hard, and hopefully I haven't already wrecked it. Sorry about that. We can't go any further. The thing under there looks like the type of like CPU looking thing that you see around the place in computers, where a little die bit sticks up in the middle of a thing that's like a thick PCB. Yes, I'm going to reinstall that because I don't want to destroy this, and chances are we just have destroyed it. So we should test this thing quickly just before we continue so I can see how I feel about things. Let's plug this in and power it up and see. Just make sure the TV still works. I really don't want to destroy it. Well, the panel of the TV is already wrecked, so I suppose it wouldn't matter that much. Still come up. Guess we got lucky. And we have an echo because the TV is not muted and it's transmitting the stuff. So it looks like we're missing some reds over there. Okay, TV still works, that's good. Okay, so we didn't destroy it. Now that's probably got high voltages in it. Next order of business. Let's see if we can open up this. Again, I don't want to destroy it, but I also want to see what's going on in there. So when you look at the connector, one connector, we see that it's got there 5 pairs using little capacitor looking things. Well, they're definitely capacitors because it says C there. We've got 5 of those, and then we got 2 others with another component which look like resistors. 5 pairs is the sort of thing you do get with HDMI and DisplayPort, and you also get an auxiliary bus for sending like I2C kind of data, but it's a bit different on those, on DisplayPort, especially the auxiliary bus. I don't know about HDMI, so maybe that's what it is. I was wondering if I should try wiring an HDMI cable onto this thing and then try and plug it into another display and see what happens. But I don't have a 4K display lying around, although I've got an HDMI splitter which can downsample 4K. I also don't really want to destroy this. So it's got those, and then that's probably a power supply for the optical transmitters, and maybe that's related, and there's 2 other ports there. It's possible that there are some really fine strands of conductor in this thing that go to the other side. And I don't know if there will be serializers in this to mean that there's only one fiber, like a SERDES, what do you call that, serial assembly and disassembly thing. It seems to have ventilation, and presumably if we crack it around there, we'll be able to slide it out. Is there anything else of note? Underneath there, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And that's the underside of the BGA that drives that one link thing. I did see available just like wire versions of this One Connect, like 2 meter and 3 meter just cables. I guess that's a cheaper way of replacing your fiber thing if you break it, since this is like $200 maybe to replace. I think it's about 5 meters long. And it's got a rolling thing that it rolls around, that you can roll up the excess cable in, so you don't end up snagging it around your chair legs and your pets and small children and all that business. Some kind of ROM thing, presumably. So there's a connector footprint there, which looks like it's probably in the regions where you need to have an encryption key card thing to watch TV, like Japan. That you would have a card socket in the side there, and you can also see there the footprints of where the AV thing would be if it was in here. And you probably can't just solder those sockets in to make it work either, because there are a couple of footprints, not a huge amount though. I don't know, maybe it would work. I suppose the firmware in it decides that. I don't know what that is, but these are the bottoms of the AV, and you can see stuff there. AV, and all the tracks related to that go over to there. Yeah, annoying we can't get the heatsink off, but I think it's just going towards that main processor thing. There's some chips visible there. There's other various power supply components under there. Let's poke this about and see what it can do. Let's not destroy it in the process. Give it a poke, but without destroying my fingers. I think it must be clipped. Thing is, it's shielded inside there as well. Maybe we should just saw off these ends and see if that releases it. I think we should destroy the TV end instead. I don't know. I don't want to make it look all messy, but I don't think we have a choice, do we? If we want to see in it. Making bad use of knives here. Now, if we can pull on it at the same time, or maybe we can cut the clips off. Doesn't have any interest in coming out, unfortunately. Maybe it's got side clips as well. Ah, what a hassle. Destroy my nice, really expensive cable. For what? Just for making a video. Just so we can see what's inside it. Problem is, it's probably soldered shut as well. Okay, there's side clips as well. Okay, we're just clipping this off. Okay. Now. Oh, look at that, we got it open. Suppose that marks the top rather than the direction, because it's actually the other direction. Okay, so I think we can open it now. It is soldered, but should be able to bend it up a bit. The solder will probably just crack off. There's probably a molded plastic thing inside there anyway that you can't. We won't actually be able to see anything in here because it's a sealed unit, like with molded plastic on it. Okay, let's do it where we can see. Okay, let's desolder that. It's a bit gross. Look what we have here. Oh, it doesn't fit through a part where the cable has been squashed. It's a very perfectly sized hole. Okay, look at this. Here is the thing. There are 8 fibers, no wires. And it looks like they've been plugged into these devices. And it's probably both directions. Probably what's happening here. Probably what we've got, since that side takes the 4, well, it has to be 4 because that's how many there are. That's how many fibers there are. 4 fibers for the transmit data. Maybe another transmit over there with those capacitors there. That might be some sort of retimer thing. And there's possibly some receives on the side because you can see they're different. See, that's got one big die thing in it, and that there is different. A small die thing. So possibly this has a 1 transmit and 3 receives. Or 2 transmits and 2 receives. Because that one's probably all transmits. That means we've got to open the other end now and have a look. Ah, yes, and so that stuff you can see there is some fluff that surrounds the fibers. So the end of that's there and it's being glued. Now we need to test it to make sure it still works. Take a close-up photo of that and then we can analyze it a bit better. Well, I'll try and look up that chip and then come back with some information. Samsung NX500, probably the best camera ever made, even though it was obsoleted about 5 or 6 years ago. It still never lets me down. Have a look at this. Got a good close-up photo of the transmitter thing. This chip here, I wasn't able to find any information about that. I tried the various numbers, couldn't find anything. You see the fibers are glued at that end there. Presumably the fiber manufacturer prepares this end and these little plug things because they'll need to test to determine which is which, and then they mark that one with a red so you know that that's what goes to the one that's red at the other end. So that will be supplied as a pre-prepared unit from the fiber manufacturer, plugged into these, and then glued on top so that it doesn't go bad. We're not really much wiser on what's actually going on here, but I think it's fairly obvious that that is 4 lanes of transmission, and on this side it's potentially another lane of transmission and 3 lanes of reception, or maybe just 2. This looks like 2 outputty type things come there, filter into this, and then some stuff leaves. I'm not going to take off the bottom of the plug. Yeah, probably that's another transmit line. It has some interesting sort of filtery things there which look like they're optional on these lanes but not fitted. So presumably that goes in there and then drives, and then the reception comes in and comes out of here and here perhaps. Very shame we can't find the datasheet for it, but perhaps what we can do is match up the pins. Since we've got the what that plugs into, we can just go and look at it here. Can we get a good quality picture? Maybe I should have just taken a picture. But anyway, we can see the 5 lanes there pretty clearly, and then the one that's got those 2 resistors is the other, presumably 2, well, it's a pair. So maybe it's just 1 receive. Yeah, that would make sense. Okay, the other thing I determined while I was looking up, trying to find that chip, or what I discovered, is on the corners, both corners of this one Connect box and the center, what I believe are infrared emitters. They're connected there to what I presume is a transistor. This thing here, because of the 2F marking on it, PNP transistor, and the way it's wired definitely looks like what we've got there. If we look at the way that's wired there, the LED there to ground comes off the collector, and then there'll be a power supply connecting to the emitter there, pin 2, through a resistor thickish track coming from the power supply, and then the base, which has got a pull up resistor to the power supply, that little tiny one, and then a base resistor, that other tiny one, which goes to a little tiny wire just above where the 1 is written there. That's definitely an emitter of some sort. What I assume the point of that is you've got your TV out on your desk or above your fireplace if you like breaking your neck looking up at it, and then this box is hidden away in a cupboard somewhere in your entertainment center, and then you can use the remotes from your other entertainment equipment that gets received by the TV and then retransmitted by these into your entertainment cupboard to control your equipment that you've got in there. That's what I believe is going on there. Okay, so let's put this stuff back together. Well, I'll just put it back together and then we'll have a look at the TV itself. Okay, I put this one Connect box back together. I ended up I snapped it all back together and realised I haven't put the power supply in, so I'd take it apart again. There you go, that's all working, not broken, good. This is what the other end of the cable is like, the fibre thing, and it has this rubbery rolling it up thing so that the extra cable that you're not using can be kept out of the way of your wild animals and wild children and chair legs and all that business that's going to destroy the delicate fibre cable. So you roll it up. The problem with that is it ends up getting really, really twisted when you roll it or unroll it, so you pretty much have to unplug it, straighten it all out and de-twist it. Yeah, if you want to change its length, but the intention is that you install it and this gets glued or taped down the wall somehow so that it's very difficult to see, and then it goes around the edge of your room over to where your entertainment area is, and then it doesn't get touched after that. But I guess that's the people that made it. Yeah, we're not opening this one, sorry. Too much risk. At least this still works. I'm pleased it still works after we did all that to it. This cable seems like it's had quite a bit of abuse to it. It must have been rolled really tightly on this because it has a lot of kinks along it. luckily that doesn't seem to have damaged it yet. Well, not enough to affect the image. It seemed good. Okay, well, let's switch to the other camera and we'll take a look at the TV itself. The other camera. Probably going to have sound issues because I'm going to be over there a bit. Let's just have a look at some photos. This is what it looked like when I got it. It looks like something's been bashed or shot into the bottom left corner of the screen, and there was visible arcing and a bit of smoke, and this part was getting extremely hot, and it kind of worked, but eventually it kept cutting out because it's burned into a short circuit with carbonization there. Additionally to that, it's been bashed in on this corner, and you see how it's stretched out this rim, which is an aluminum strip kind of thing that goes around the whole panel, and that has a dent in that corner, and it's stressing this area. So it looks like it suffered two separate incidences, because that could not have caused that to get bashed in, and that getting bashed in would not cause such a direct hit type thing. Now it looks like this. The hole was bashed into it was there, and I've picked away the glass until it stops having a short circuit, which was quite tricky, but it's resulted in the loss of the connections which make their way up the side. Yeah, unfortunately. I had to pick off several layers of glass and tear the polarizer along there, and so it's ended up cracking it quite a bit more. But it turns on now, which is quite a bit more than what it was doing before. There's also an aluminum strip along that's sort of glued along the bottom of the panel, and I think that's where it covers where the flex cables join onto the glass, which will come underneath. Yeah, because that got bent out, but it can't be straightened back, so I just chopped it off. Better than nothing. Save it from going to the bin for now. Anyway, let's have a look at what's inside the TV. So we're on this camera now. And once you take the back off, this is what you see. The black coloured parts are the speakers, and that appears to have three, it's like tri-wired with three cables going into each speaker cabinet. Up there you can see the amplifier chips that it uses, which looks like three stereo Class D amplifiers. The one connect cable goes into there, and we can see there a very similar arrangement of tracks coming out of it. Well, perhaps that answers the question, because all of those there have resistors now, the 5, and the other two, the other pair which we suspected was the return data, has capacitors. So that makes sense now that there's one lane going towards the one connect box and 5 lanes going towards this part of the screen. So the two large ribbon cables going into the panel, and there are two cables there which go up to the power supply area, and there's a chart there that shows the pinout of that and the pinout of the other one. This one is all PWM signals for the LEDs, so there's 12 channels, and this one here is power and some data. So presumably there's some ICs somewhere on the back there for controlling the backlights. So it's a pretty standard thing. Got the mains coming in, got some filters, rectifier, PFC, booster, choke, various FETs, and maybe diodes, the bulk DC bus capacitance, which have little caps on them to stop it exploding too violently, and then the main switching transformer up there, the rectifiers, capacitors, and then this part here is the LED drivers, 12 LED drivers, and then there's two ribbon cables which take the LED signals into the panel. Now down here, connecting onto that main board, is a what appears to be, or says it is, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth transceiver. That's interesting. And then on the bottom there's a small board there with one button which can control the TV. It's quite difficult to remove the first time, and now it's probably wrecked. But that has on it that, which looks like an IR transmitter and receiver, like IRDA kind of style, and that there, which is another optical sensor, which is perhaps the ambient light sensor. And then the bottom there. The way you take this apart, or get the back off, is these clips here, or these wires lock into clips that are part of the back panel, all the way along the sides and all the way along the top and down the other side. The bottom edge has these clips, which are little hooks which go over the, like through a hole in the base of the back panel. And the way to open it is there's a small notch on both bottom corners in the back panel where you can stick your screwdriver in and reef it upwards, and it will pop off the first few of these. And then it's just a matter of sticking your screwdriver or a plastic tool in the crack that you've formed and ripping it off of these clips. Now I found quite a few of them snapped off. And you do that down the sides, and then from the top the same thing, coming in, ripping it up. It's very dodgy sticking your screwdriver in the back to lift it up, because you don't know what the tip is going to be digging into, but it's all steel along there all the way around the top and the sides, so you're not going to destroy anything, but it's still quite a concerning thing to do. Do not recommend it. That's the details for the panel that's used. 2018. Various power supplies. I'm not going to try taking this off. It's probably going to be stuck down like the other one is, and we'd have to take the whole board out. Take the boards out. There's a little stopper there that you have to bend the board above and then slide it over, and then all of these things will unhook. It's the same thing on this power board. There's two locks there, one up in this corner, and again you've got to bend the board up and then slide it over so that it comes off of these hooks. That's the power input connection. So hopefully that was an interesting look at a fairly high-end TV. I don't recommend taking your one apart unless it needs some sort of maintenance done on it.